Do your research.
Yeah.
Interview agents. Figure out which one that you've got a trust factor with, and which ones you think that have the experience that you need to be able to make that step. Because it truthfully is a life journey. And
Well, welcome back to another episode of the Bamford Co Podcast. Once again, I'm joined by my brother Gregg, and today we're going to talk about the 5 biggest mistakes buyers make when purchasing a home.
It's scary. So I'd say probably, I think the number one thing would be starting to look for a house that they can't afford.
For sure. Is that a lot of people actually, I find that people aren't doing the research, is that they're not, looking at their budgets. They're not looking at the neighborhoods that they want, is that they're just looking at what cosmetic features that they like in properties, and it's not necessarily the right first steps when it comes down to it.
I believe it. And especially in today's market, once you set yourself up for something nicer than what you can afford, it can be pretty frustrating when that's not in your wheelhouse anymore. For sure.
Probably delaying yourself 2 to 3 months and losing out on a couple good properties, and maybe even paying a little bit more for the same property that if you did all the proper things in the right procedure that you would have got a couple months prior.
Yeah, that's a great point. What's the number 2?
Well, pre-approval, for sure. And actually not just doing a verbal pre-approval. Is it actually looking at going through, getting your credit reports done? Is it pulling all those credits, going through, getting your pay stubs, your T4s, all those kind of things, until people have actually got you locked in as a mortgage rate, is that you should not be looking at any homes.
Yeah, I
not
agree.
even online. Really, is it to set that standard? It's to get that pre-approval first, and then from there is that then you actually know what you can afford, what you can budget, and that's where you actually start your search.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I think that too many people go with just that pre-approval, that they've just got a phone call from a bank or so forth, and we hear it all the time. Yeah, I'm pre-approved. And then when it comes down to it, they're not ready to put in that offer because the timeline's going to take too long because they still haven't done all the work that they needed to. And sometimes actually what happens is it takes weeks, if not months, to be able to get letters from their employer and so forth. And so some of these things are unseen, timelines, but I mean, these are the things that if you do it ahead of time, then you don't have to worry about it. Because when we're looking at putting in offers, and especially in today's market, we're looking at the shortest timelines for conditions that we possibly can if we are going to make it conditional. And it's understanding with that mortgage broker what financing is in place and how long it's going to be able to take to get done. So I think that's a huge one.
People handcuff themselves, realistically, with not having the pre-approval in place. Is that, for an example, like a lot of our mortgage brokers, we're maybe two days, maybe 2 to 3 days
for a good mortgage broker.
Yeah, for a good mortgage broker being fully approved once they've had that approval process. Once we found that house, is that we're getting those letters back saying fully approved 2 to 3 days. When they're not actually doing their pre-approvals, their T4s, employment verification, is that you're 7 to 10 days lucky.
Yeah.
To be able to do that, right? So our negotiating power is thrown out the doors. A lot of times we're 5 days, 6 days, shorter timelines for conditions to be able to put these deals together. And once you don't have that pre-approval in place, is that you're back to being with everybody else that's going to have that 10 to 14 day condition timeline.
Here's another issue that I find too, is that people say I'm pre-approved and I'm just dealing with just a normal banker. And the thing is, unless you're dealing with somebody that deals with mortgages on the daily basis and has those relationships and has that buying power, which makes that your mortgage is going to be pushed through faster than anything else. That's a big mistake that we find, is just saying, oh yeah, I'm pre-approved at a bank, but not dealing with the actual licensed mortgage broker for that bank or someone that is,
we live in a specialist world, and we need to be working with those specialists, to be able to do it on the timelines that we're looking to meet.
That was well said.
Let me finish. But is it to meet those timelines so we can actually, work best for you? You know, so
Yeah.
is it, to me, that's a big concern. You know, I always ask for a letter, you know, a pre-approval letter, and you know, and usually it's me phoning the mortgage broker and saying, hey, guess what? Like, this is where we're looking at. Is this still feasible? You know,
Right.
what's our timelines that we need to be able to, when we find that right house? Are you, you know, some people are 2-3 days, some people are a week still, and
Yeah.
it depends on the lenders that they're working with, or institute that they're working with, right? So that's a big one.
We all become part of that buyer's team.
Yeah.
So the better communication that we have with everybody, from the lender to the home inspector to the lawyer and so forth, it makes it easier for us to understand what's going on and to be able to solve things ahead of time. So we want to be involved with every step with who you've chosen. And I mean, it's not always who we pick. I mean, we've got suggestions. We've got lots of amazing people that we can refer off to our clients, but it's just working with them so that we're all on the same page.
For sure. Yeah. We need that game plan. We need those timelines. We need to be able to, that's going to help us make an educated decision when the time comes.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So what's the third most common mistake that buyers use out there?
I think not using a realtor.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I know you're really good at what you do, Greg, but can you explain that a little bit more for me?
I think a lot of times people think that they're going to be able to beat everybody to the market by just seeing new listings that hit it, and they're going to phone the listing agent. By the time you phone the listing agent, if it's a good property, the property's usually conditionally sold. And so,
or it's got 20 showings lined up for the day and 10 for tomorrow
you can't
already.
fit in. And I mean, we've had it to where people are frantically trying to be able to even get their own agent in rather than get themselves in. And you're like, hey, I'm sorry. I mean, unless you're pre-approved, unless you're these things, we're not just going to just start showing the property to somebody, right? So I think that finding that professional realtor and interviewing them and see what experience they have, especially in today's market, because it's different. Like, not many people know how to work in today's market. It's moving so fast. We're quite fortunate, and I mean, it's not to boost us up, but this is how we came into real estate.
Yeah.
I mean, we used to write offers $50,000 above list price, and by the time our client took possession 3 months later, it was worth $40,000 more. It's like, this is how we learned how to sell real estate.
Yeah, and we're also looking at the big picture. We're not just spending people's money to be able to do it. We're looking at the big picture because we're seeing what's coming down the road.
Oh, it's amazing.
You know?
And the thing is, once a lot of times we see the numbers like file in, we've only beat out somebody by like $4,000, $5,000. So it's just knowing the experience and so forth to do it, right?
Or the condition timelines. That's a big one. I know, is it like people are always looking and they're saying, well, why can you do this in 7 days when other people are doing it in 14?
Yeah.
And it's like, because we got our ducks in a row.
Yeah.
Right. The other thing that's when you're not using a realtor and you're phoning maybe the listing agent on the day that it's listed, when you're in a multiple offer situation, is that they're in a conflict of interest, is it being, you know, both being in a limited dual agency, acting for both the buyer and the seller. So in that exact scenario, is that they can't actually tell you what price to put on the paper, right? And I'll tell you one thing is that, you know, our experience is that, you know, goes a long way, is that usually we can kind of pinpoint of where that price point is going to be with even looking at comparables, right? So to me, that's a big one, and I don't think a lot of people actually realize that scenario that they're putting themselves in that situation.
And we've been in the business long enough, like, that you have relationship with other realtors, and so you understand the way that they work and which ones kind of do more business and so forth. So it just helps us also then get our foot in the door if we're trying to negotiate with somebody, or at the same time even maybe find stuff that's coming onto the market ahead of time, and with that relationship and finding that right realtor, right? So I guess this is a little bit of a marketing point, find a realtor, but I think it will make you succeed in the long run.
Yeah, I think it's also being honest. You know, like, there's nothing, you know, it's these are the steps that you should be doing with anything.
For sure. Do your research.
Yeah.
Interview agents. Figure out which one that you've got a trust factor with, and which ones you think that have the experience that you need to be able to make that step. Because it truthfully is a life journey, and it right now in today's world, this is not just finding a property. Like back in the day, you'd start working with somebody, 90 days later they'd have possession of their house and you're moving in. Some clients I'm working with for 2 years because we're trying to find them that perfect home within today's in today's market.
So would you say that the fourth would be picking the wrong agent? I think that you've talked a little bit about that already. What would be kind of some of the things, you mentioned, interviewing agents. What would be some of the questions that you would ask some of the agents? Like, it's not just about how many homes you sold, right? It's kind of, it's about feeling and having that personal relationship with it. Is that kind of the trust factor that you'd...
I'd probably interview them and see what their knowledge is on even neighborhoods,
Right.
types of properties. What do they know about new builds compared to used homes? What are the things that they're supposed to look for in a property or not look for, right? As like when we go through it, we're like a home inspector. We pre-inspect every single property. Like we should be able to catch 90% of what a home inspector should catch, right? Like we've been through so many of them. So I think it's sitting down with someone, first of all, knowing if they're knowledgeable within what the style of home, like what is included in a house, but at the same time, and then also the market, understanding what's happening in the market so that they can educate you on that, right? So you got to do a little bit of research probably online and then figure out, does that align with what realtors are saying and so forth. And I think that's probably the biggest thing. I think a lot of times they just find somebody online and just then go with that person, right? But I do think that you should interview a couple different people to see if they meet up to what you deserve.
Buying or selling, I think that's a good point. Doesn't matter which way is it. Everybody does it a little bit differently in our industry, right? So I think it's just just like with most things that I do, it's finding all the appropriate information so I can make an educated decision.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, and it's because once you build that relationship with that agent, then they're sticking. You're a team again, as I mentioned, and so that you're sticking with it. Someone that also I think makes time for you. So I mean, for an example, like I think that the priority should go to the person that's looking to see the houses in the afternoon. So if someone's not around and they're not showing properties and so forth in today's market, if they don't have that time, move on to somebody else. Right. Because you're going to miss out on way too many properties. I think if you miss out on one property, start seeing why it happened. If it's two.
Well, truthfully, if you're missing out on two properties, and they're selling before you even get in, so you're probably you can almost think that each one that you miss is probably, property values are probably going up $5,000.
It could be, yeah.
Like just because that new house is the new comparable.
Yeah.
Right? And so if you're missing those things, is that you're just costing yourself money.
Yeah.
In this market, right? Like we're dealing in a different time of where real estate is and things are moving so quickly. That's the only reason why I say that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the fifth?
Well, once again, to where this market's moving and how quickly things are moving, is that I would say is it's probably selling your home before finding that next house. Right now is that we're very confident in being able to say that we can sell these homes, and we always look at the high end and the low end, and we make those for our clients to make those educated decisions. But once we sell in this market, and sometimes, like you said, hopefully not all of our clients take 2 years, but it does take a little bit of time to find that right house because it's not available on the market today.
Yeah, there's some people that I've been with for 6 months, a year, and so forth. And I mean, if someone would have sold their house, I'd say in February of this year, and let's say it was worth $400,000 then, I'd say that house, you could argue that same house now today in the end of October could probably be worth anywhere from $460,000, $470,000, maybe even above, depending on what it is and what location.
In the right location.
In the right location.
And maybe move-in ready. I think that makes a big difference, is that things that are renovated, and I think that buying power is there for people now in that situation. Yeah. Maybe not if it hasn't been renovated
but those things,
just for perspective for
perspective,
our consumers,
So
right?
if it's an amazing house, it's probably seen about a 15 to 20% incline this year. If it's not, then it's quite a bit less.
Yeah, I agree. But like you said, is that you're basically pricing yourself. Your buying power, if you're selling first, is your buying power is going down as property values are going up.
And then you're finding something that you don't love, and then you're racing into something,
and you're renting.
Right?
Which we have less than 1% vacancy rate. So it's it's not an easy situation for families to be in. And that's where we find a lot of our clients as well too, right?
And I guess, you know what, if there was even another one, it would be being patient. right? It's just being patient and making sure that you understand what the process is, where you're going to be able to find that perfect home, and then working towards it.
Yeah.
So I think that that's probably a big factor on that. And then once your house then sells, once you find that property you buy, you've already I guess you've already got your house ready for the last how many months, right? And so
Yeah. I actually, on that note, is that I would say that maybe, lost my train of thought there.
well, that's fine.
Yeah.
You interviewed someone from Mecklenburg Financial Group, I guess a couple months ago, Cole Baumel, and he was talking about some incentives for buyers.
Yeah. The first time home savings, the FHSA, the first time home savings account, that would probably be another big one, especially for first time home buyers, is that to be able to be able to have that as tax free and going directly as a down payment would be another mistake I think a lot of people, especially first time home buyers, would be making by not putting those in.
Just because they don't even know about it.
Of course.
Yeah.
Not many people know about that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, these are probably the biggest things that we find. There's always a lot of different things that we think of, and this could also, these 5 biggest mistakes a home buyer can make might change depending on the market and where you're at, right? So if you're in Calgary or Vancouver, it could be totally different. But right now in Saskatoon, these are the 5 that we pulled up that we thought were the most important, and that will help you through your real estate journey, being able to find you that perfect home or the best home within your price range, then to be able to move on to that next step in your life. So.
Yeah. Well, thanks again, Greg. This is always a treat having another conversation with my brother on a podcast here. Thanks again for Dufferin Media. If you have any ideas of different things that we can cover for educating, our viewers out there, please feel free to drop us a direct message. Obviously, our details are in the bottom there. Greg, do you have anything to add for?
No, I just, if you do need help, reach out to us. We'd be happy to do an evaluation on your property and then help you with the next step of figuring out what you're looking for on that buying side. So give us a call and we'd happily sit down with you and help you out.
Great. Well, thanks again, Greg.